One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Have you put guesting on other podcasts as a top priority for you this year? Maybe? Yes? No? You're thinking about it? Well, today I'm excited because I am going to give you some details, some behind the scenes things that maybe you've thought about before, or maybe you haven't, whenever it comes to how you promote your appearances on other podcasts, because this is something that we need to be talking about. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? Okay, so in 2021, I have made it a priority to get on more podcasts this year. Now, it is January 2021 when I'm recording this, and I have a few projects that I need to finish up first before I make this my number one priority. But it is something that I am going to be focusing on in the second quarter of the year, as well as the rest of the year and even going into next year. I plan on guesting on more shows very intentionally. But recently I've been asked by other podcasters, because I tell them, hey, the number one way to grow your show and get in front of other people that would be interested in your podcast is to get on other podcasts. But then I get kind of a deer in headlights look where they say, okay, that's great, but once I'm on someone else's show, how can I help promote that interview? And I think that if you're already thinking about this, you are a podcast host dream, because I can't tell you how incredible it is to know that I have an awesome interview with a guest, and then they are really excited to share that interview with their audience, because hopefully it's going to reach more people and have a bigger impact than if it was just me sharing it with my people and then it didn't go any further. So as a podcast host yourself, be thinking about that, right? Be thinking about how can you tell other people to share your show. But today we're specifically talking about how you can maximize your guest appearances on other podcasts. So I want to go ahead and throw some assumptions out there, because this, like all the details and the steps that I'm going to give you, it's assuming that you've already done the interview and the air date hasn't happened yet, okay? Because there's a whole other thing that you can do after it's aired and it's been a while, and how can you get people to go listen to it and all the things. But I am specifically talking about, let's say I've already done an interview, right, with a host, right, because I'm guesting on someone else's show. I've done the interview with the host, but they have not aired it yet. What are some of the things that I could do as the guest of that podcast to make sure that, one, I show up as a respectful guest, right? Like I want to help them out because it's helping promote their show. But two, I want to do a great service to their show so they could potentially have me back on in the future. That is very important, because I've had several repeat guests on this podcast, and I have someone actually I just reached out to the other day that she posted something incredible on Instagram, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have her back on the show, because she shows up, she helps promote the episode whenever it goes live, and just to be honest, she's one of my really good friends. So I was like, I can't wait to have you back on the show. But that's how you want your audience, that's how you want your guest appearances to feel to other hosts. You want to make sure you're making a good impression. Okay, so those are our assumptions. Now, in thinking about, okay, I've done the interview, what is my next step? What do I need to do now? Well, the first thing is reach out to the host either right after the interview happens or before or after it's already happened. Know the air date. Actually ask them. Say, hey, this interview was fantastic. Do you know when it's going to air? They may know, or they may tell you, oh, it's going to be, 6 weeks from now, or it's going to be 5 months from now. It just depends on the host. Every host is different, but try to get that date from them and then put it on your calendar. Put it on your calendar and say, this interview is airing on this date so you don't forget. Okay, like this is so important. I've actually had this happen to me where I did an interview with a newer podcaster. They put the episode out and I didn't even know. Like they didn't come back and tell me like, oh, by the way, your episode is live. I had to hear somebody else say, oh, I loved your episode on this podcast. I was like, oh, the host didn't even tell me it was live. So there's two little nuggets of wisdom there. One, as a host, always make sure you tell your guest, hey, this is when your show is going to air, because then they'll be more likely to help you promote it. But two, as a guest, always ask, when is my episode going to go live? Like I said, they may know, or they may say, oh, we'll let you know the week of, or the day of, or maybe afterwards, but try to get that date and put it on your calendar so you remember to promote it on your own social channels or on your email list, or how you want to help promote this episode. So that's number one, know the air date. Number two is find a link to be able to share that episode, whether it's an Apple Podcast link, if it's on the host website or another popular platform player. Just make sure that you have a link that you can send to your audience, because then they'll be more likely to go follow up and listen to it if you actually give them a link. Yeah, you can say, hey, I was a guest on this podcast. Go listen wherever you listen to podcasts, but it's just that much easier for your audience to actually do the thing if you lay it out on a silver platter and you show them exactly, hey, listen to this podcast. Here's the link. Go check it out. It just makes it a lot easier. So that's the second thing. The first thing is know the air date. The second is make sure you have a link to share with your audience. And then the third thing that you can do is ask the host for whatever promo assets that they're creating. Now, what are promo assets? These are promotional items that their marketing team or maybe themselves are sharing when an episode goes live. So if you listen to this podcast, you likely have seen what I post on Instagram or on Facebook or in our Facebook group, but it is usually graphics, sound bites, quotes, any of those things. You want to ask them like, hey, can I grab whatever things that you're creating to help promote this? Because I want to share those with my audience as well. Or I would like to put that in an email, or I want to put that in my Instagram story. I want to put it in a Facebook story. I want to share it on Twitter, whatever it is. But ask the host for the promotional assets that they're sharing for your interview. They're creating them anyway, right? It's not like you're asking them to go above and beyond. They're already going to be sending these out. Just say, hey, I would love to share those with my audience because I really want people to listen to the conversation that we had. So that's the third thing. The first is know the air date. The second, make sure you have a link to share. The third is ask for promotional assets. And then the fourth one is kind of one of those optional things because not all hosts will allow you to do this, but some will. So the fourth thing is whenever you go onto someone's podcast, this is like a strategy, right? You are trying to promote your own podcast. You're trying to promote your program or a book or a live event, whatever it may be, right? We all have different reasons for guesting on other people's stages, podcast, or however you're showing up as a guest. But you want to give a very specific URL, not just a generic, like I will never go onto someone's podcast and say, yeah, go to crystalprofit.com and you can find me and connect with me. No. I'm going to give, if the host allows, now this is where it's kind of optional. It depends on what show you're going on. But if the host allows, I'm going to share a link to a free resource or somewhere that allows me to capture the people's emails that have listened to the podcast. Now, this really does vary from host to host. Now, I'm thinking of several bigger shows that do not allow for you to say your website, or they won't tell you, go to here, we created this free resource, because as the host of the show, they want to collect the email addresses. They don't want you doing that. So it is kind of, it's a little tricky. It is a little tricky, but that's why you ask the host up front. Say, hey, this is what we're promoting. I would love to share this with your audience, but if not, that's cool. I can just tell them to check me out on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. So make sure you have that conversation with anybody that you have on your podcast and you're on someone else's show. Ask them, what can we share? Like, what are the rules here? What are the guidelines? Y'all know I don't like the word rules because it really is all up to every individual podcaster. There are no black and white rules when it comes to podcasting, but I know that being overly promotional is a big no-no and will get you on kind of the blacklist of podcasts where people won't ask you to come back if you're an overly promotional person and you don't share a lot of value, but also being a little too spammy on someone else's show. I guess that's the same thing. Overly promotional and spammy are basically the same word, right? The pictures are side by side in the thesaurus. It's the exact same thing. But I can just tell you right now that if someone comes onto my show, I let them promote pretty much whatever they want. But I also pre-vet all of my guests and don't just let a wild card come onto the show. But I think that it's really important to give a very specific URL whenever you're guesting on someone else's show. And if you want to go even above and beyond that, I know that this tip, I first saw it whenever I was speaking to Tom from Interview Valet. He was saying we always make sure that our guests set up landing pages for each individual guesting spot that they do. And I think this is so smart. So here's a real quick example. If I were to be a guest on someone else's show, what I would do, and I know Angie Trueblood, I know she has an incredible guesting program as well. It's called Go Pitch Yourself. I don't know if it's open right now. I know Angie, if you're listening, I'm trying to give you a shout out for your program because I know that you've been promoting it, but I don't know when the doors close, so I don't want to tell everybody to go over there. But Angie Trueblood, she does this so well where she says, okay, we're going to set up an individual page for each guesting or guest appearance that you have. So for me, if I was doing that and I was a guest on, I'm just going to say the Potty Report. It's my own podcast. I know, but I'm going to say that. I would say, okay, here's this page you can go to, or we can connect, or you can grab this free resource that we talked about. You just go to crystalprofit.com/the Potty Report. And I would just call it whatever the name of the podcast is. Or if you wanted to keep it really simple, you could just use the first letters of the podcast, where you could say, go to crystalprofit.com/TPR. I had to think about that. It was like TPP. That's not right. That's the potty people. TPR is the Potty Report. So I could say, go there, grab your free resource. It's kind of easier to remember anyway, but do whatever works best for you. But I think that setting up individual URLs that are specific to the podcast will, one, help you just make it easier for the people listening to the show, but two, it'll actually show you how that conversation converted, right? Did you get a bunch of people on your email list from that one interview, right? Did you have a lot of traffic come to your website on that web page from that one interview? It's really important. So that's really all I have to share with you about promoting your own appearances. I'm going to run through those again. So 1, you want to know the air date when your episode's going to go live. 2, you want to have a link, right? You want to be able to share a very easy link to the episode so your audience knows where to go find it. 3, you want to ask the host for the promotional assets that they're going to be creating and sending out anyway. And then 4 is the optional one, giving a specific URL that is not generic so you can capture emails or get them into your sales funnel, whatever that looks like for you. But I highly recommend making it audience specific for each podcast guest appearance. But that's all I have for you today. But before we go, I did want to mention that we have a brand new tool that I know you're going to love. If you are a podcast host or you've been thinking about starting a podcast, then this is the tool for you. It's called the Potty Podcast Toolkit. And in here, we have so many fantastic things, from showing up as a great podcast host with confidence, to editing, to creating ideas, to so many other things. I really want you to go check this out because we made it very affordable for you to get going with your podcast this year. It's only $37. Yes, that's right. This is the most affordable product that we have, and I'm so excited because it is brand new and it is all that plus a bag of chips. So I want you to go check it out. Go to toolkit.crystalprofit.com to check it out, or you can go check out the show notes at crystalprofit.com/episode 219. You want to go check this out. I promise. There are videos and guides and worksheets, and what I really love is the 30-day planner. So if you're trying to figure out, well, when do I launch my podcast? There's actually this planner. It's this awesome spreadsheet that we created where you can input your launch date. And whenever you do that, it will spit out all the dates and a task list of what you need to accomplish to get your podcast launched in 30 days. Yeah, I know. It's pretty awesome. Like, it's what I wish I would have had when I was first creating my podcast, because it shows me step by step, this is what you need to do in week 1. This is what you need to have done by week 2 and 3 and 4. And it's so much fun. I love, love, love this really cool tool. So again, go to toolkit.crystalprofit.com to check it out. And also, if you are brand new around here, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button. That way you're notified every time we put out new episodes. And also, I want you to come join us in our free Facebook group. You can find more information in the show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 219. But there are some awesome conversations happening in the Facebook group. And I actually have really big plans for the group as we continue on through 2021 to do some group coaching in there and some things that we haven't done before, where I'm going to bring podcasters that are in the community kind of up on stage with me. We're going to have some conversations through live events, live speaking, where we're going to talk about your podcast problems and how we can fix them, make your life easier as a podcast host, and just do some other really fun things. So come join us in our free Facebook group. It's called the Profit Podcast Online Community. We would love to have you there. If you're looking for a safe space to share your podcasting ups and downs, that is exactly what you need. And also, I share information there that I don't share anywhere else, not in my newsletter, not on social media, like my main feed. I share lots of stories, and it's also a great place for feedback and collaboration with other podcasters. So make sure you check it out. You can find more information in the show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 219. But that's all I have for you today. So as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.